Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Underground Kings podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Mr. Joe Parisi, founder of Knickers. And on this episode, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. We're going to go ahead and jump directly on into the interview. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoy.
It's hard for me to stop sometimes and be like, it's not hard, but I'm a thinker. So I've always, in the past 20, 25 years, I've always said to myself, I've got to remember when life wasn't as easy and how I got to be just being able to relax a little bit. So I always play that early song in my head about, driving down the Northway with Tanya's 3-speed Ford Tempo, doing 80, 85, and that thing was redlining almost because it only had 3 gears. And I just remember it. I remember going like, I got to do it. I have to do this stuff. What am I going to do? Alessandro was just born. So I'm like, but it happened. It was a long, it might have been 2 years, but it probably felt like 10 years, every day, 6 days, 6 days a week, 7 to 7 pretty much.
But this span of your life that you're kind of describing, like this was when you were working in the tailor shop, like in the back of that tailor shop?
So in Albany, New York, there's a big mall, the mall called Cross Gates. And I had responded to an ad from a gentleman who ran a big clothing company. And it was a clothing store, a locally owned men's clothing store in Albany. And I responded to an ad where he was looking for a tailor because that was when Alessandro was born. I really was doing small tailoring gigs on the side and making no money. So I'm like, I got to start paying some bills. So I responded, and the owner of the store, great guy, he's like, you know what? We worked a deal where I could almost sublease some space about the size of this room and bring in my machines, and I would do the tailoring for the customers, and I'd get paid by the customers per piece. It worked out really good. But it was a lot of work. It was actually a big store, and it was a lot of work. So there were times I had to go, and Tanya would drive carloads of suits to my parents an hour and a half away so that their shops could do them and bring them back twice a week. Because I was there 7 to 7 every day, but I think I could do a lot of work, but it still wasn't enough, But so the money was great, and it allowed me to catch up and start, save some money. At that point, we did get into a house, my first house that we bought. So, it was great. But after a couple of years, I did meet some great suit guys, and they're like, I kept in touch with them. These guys were phenomenal. And when I decided that I was probably working too much and I wanted to build the designersuits.com website and sell clothing on the side, I called them up. I said, if you guys need suits, let me know. And all of them super guys are like, they were very responsive, ordering stuff from me. And I knew these guys had like 50 suits. They didn't have to give me an order. But that's the type of crowd they were. They were just like, this guy's starting out. Let me just buy some suits from this guy. They were doing well financially, so it wasn't probably a big deal. But still, I don't know that you get that in everyday crowd, So that really helped me a lot. It helped me jumpstart that business. And by the time we did Designer Suits went live, I was probably selling a suit or two a day, just drop shipping stuff. And it was fun. It was great. But it let me learn how to build a website, which was key in getting into Knickers and then starting that whole procedure. Because once let me go back a little bit. My dad being a tailor, my mom a seamstress and a tailor forever. My dad would make a pair of knickers for a customer probably once a month. Someone come in and say, oh, can you make this? Or what? Maybe if it was even less than that. But he had a rack full of samples. And I remember when I went there once, I'm like, man, who's maybe there's some people that would buy these funny looking golf pants. I mean, I didn't know, but it didn't bother me because I knew I could whip up a website in a few days, kind of get the domain name and whatever it took. The early designing of it was not easy, but whatever we did, I was able to launch in November of 2001, golfknickers.com. And at that point, we were just making very few colors, and we didn't have much at all. I had maybe a dozen socks to pick from and some hats. And we had no inventory, but we had a great website, functioned very well, and we delivered quickly. I mean, I always wanted, in even the suit business, I always looked at it like, how would I want to be treated as a customer? And number one is, if I place an order, I want the thing like yesterday. I don't want to wait like a week. Nobody does. Even back then, I'm like, okay, well, I know I can get UPS to bring it to the guy if I just got it to UPS. So we did a lot of same-day shipping, and that really helped Knicker in the early days get to a following where little by little, it was very easy. I shouldn't say easy, but early days of Knicker, I saw right away that it was there's something going on here. There's people that love this stuff. They would buy a gray one, and then they'd come back, and we'd have black. And I didn't have any colors. I had simple lineup. I had nothing. Now that I look at it, we had no selection. God bless these people for buying from us. But I was like, oh, they love it. If they bought a black one and they went on the golf course, the week later they'd have to buy something else because they can't show up with a black pair, again or twice or three times in a row. So they'd call us and they'd get a different color. And quickly I said, okay, and I'm doing this all out of a house, by the way, with a third bedroom turned into an office, and the machines are in the basement. And it was only like a few months, and I'm like, okay, I got to get probably a space or something. I got to, and I didn't pull it. I always ran the businesses like, I'll put up with what I need to, and I'll let the business tell me when I need to grow to the next level, let's say. So I actually had almost 2 employees working out of my third bedroom office, let's say, before I even got the first office space, because I had a fixed cost with the house. I was going to live there anyways. I had a third bedroom that we didn't use for anything else, and I could turn it into an office. So by then I had a full-time great kid, Jeff, great kid, first employee. But he would answer the phones and process orders and all that stuff while I could make the product, ship it, and do some other stuff. But that was like, it didn't take long. It's probably a year later, and we were 2 employees deep and moving, 15 orders a day. So I knew something was going on. Like, okay, well, we got to keep this up. And that's when I really made an investment in bringing in other colors, bringing in more sock designs. And, now that I look at it, we've got 156 Argyle socks, but I started with 8 or 6 or a dozen. I forgot what it was. But every time we would add a selection of socks, I'd have a lot of great customers who have almost all the other socks by their incentive was there. I'm like, it was quickly within a few years, we had thousands of customers that I could send an email to, and they would be like, okay, I'll get the orange pair now that you have orange Knickers. So, I mean, I'm not an idiot in a way. I like to be like, okay, well, I guess if I get another color, I just send another email and they're going to just buy that color. So it really helped that I had a great customer base, and the incentive on the early days was like, listen, the more effort we're putting into this, I didn't have to wait for a response. I literally was, within a few days, I'm like, this is great. I'm glad I did those socks. Now let's work on more socks. So it was pretty, it was a lot of fun. The early days of starting that business was a lot of fun. Met great people throughout the years and everything.
Now, I think a really critical point to highlight as well is the time period when you started getting into these things, and the fact that you figured out the website building and the internet side of it, more of the e-commerce, because a lot of businesses were having the conversation as to whether the internet was a fad or not, or like people aren't going to order stuff online, or who's going to put in their card information online. But you obviously saw a different level of opportunity in it, in the fact that you can expand your customer base infinitely. You no longer have geographic boundaries or a certain location and a hub, and you have a certain client base within driving distance. So what was part of the thought process for you as far as like when did you first encounter the internet, and what was the moment in time for you when you realized that it could be implemented into your business?
Well, Colden, I don't know if I remember the first time I that happened. I just know my mentality was always, I can do this. If somebody else is doing it, I can do it. And I definitely had the energy to put the effort into trying to do it, let's say. So even if it failed, I never thought about whether or not. The only thing I didn't want to do was have 3-4 years later say, I wish I tried to do it. So I know my mentality was, I'll just learn it. And I speak of it like it was pretty quick, but I guess it wasn't. It was probably a few weeks of dragging and, programming and copying and pasting. I don't remember what I did, but I know that I had to do it. For me, it didn't matter if I was up at 3 a.m. to do it. I had to do it. I looked around in my crappy apartment, before the knicker days and the suit days. I was living in an apartment in Clifton Park. It was nice, but it wasn't me. Like, I'm like, I got to do something here. So being up at 2-3 a.m. building a website, that was like super incentive. I just look, I would go like this and I'd be like, okay, I'm not going to bed. I got more stuff to do. So, that was nice that, yeah, the internet did work. Who knows what would have happened if people in the end would have said, like, I'm just not going to put my credit card in thing, in the early days, I'm sure there were battles. I forgot how I started taking credit cards and all that stuff, but you did have to find the right company that would be legitimate and, safe and all that stuff. We did, in the early days, we had Yahoo hosting our website. So some of that stuff, I did some research, and there weren't many players back then. I mean, you just took, you gambled it up and did what people said to do and went with it. It was fun. It was, at the time, I just don't know if I can pinpoint it. I just know me, I'm like, okay, I'll do this. And if it doesn't work, so what? I know how to build a website. And that's interesting you say that, because in the early days when I started building a site and we sold a couple suits and I would sell the Knickers at first, nobody was really doing it. And one of my original businesses and a parent company that I put the Knicker umbrella under it's called El Mundo. And in Italian and very close in Spanish, it means the world. Because I remember in the early days, I'm like, I could go to probably every store. Who wouldn't want to sell? Like, if you sold paint, why wouldn't you put some paint products on a website and ship it to somebody who's going to buy it? So the idea was really to actually just have an e-commerce platform and go out and build stores for local mom and pops that are kind of like me, but not, nobody, even now I should say, but especially back then, nobody's computer savvy. Nobody would know what to do. It's like, so I started the company called El Mundo just to maybe do that. And it probably would have become something if I wasn't so distracted and Knicker really caught on the early days to keep me busy. We had no time to do anything else.
Now, I think that also poses another question for me that I know is definitely like a constant thought process for me, and that's working in the business versus working on the business. And like, I think any business owner that succeeds to a certain extent is going to reach a point in time where they're still working in the business, working the 12, 14, 16-hour days, whatever it may be. And maybe they're bringing on some help, but it's almost like the thing that they don't want to let go of the very thing that got them there. So they're still throttling on to the business and like seeking work and almost like creating work for themselves. And to me, that'd be like, that'd be like you spending every waking hour shipping product when your mind is more than likely best utilized in building the business and looking for new opportunities for the business, or even working on other businesses. So what recommendations would you have for someone when they're kind of nearing that point or that stage in their business, when they're at a point where they want to scale, they want to do more, but they're having they need to like let go of that control, I guess, or how do you start to pull yourself away so that you can build? So like in that instance, were you hiring people at that point?
Yeah, it was only a few months after November of 2001 where Knickers started. I couldn't keep up, and I still did some suits on the side. So, we had 10, 12, 20 packages on my front porch of a house that UPS would come and pick up. I mean, it was, but at a certain point, I would always be like, for me, it was very important to control cost. I always wanted to be like, listen, it might be a great January, it might have been a great June, but we don't know what the rest of the year is going to bring. So I always wanted to make sure it wasn't just a blip, and it was a true, pattern of escalation over time. And I would be like, okay, at this point, I can't do it. It's been, 5-6 months of a steady business amount, whatever, if it's a numbers game or how many outfits and all that. And then I would bring on someone but I was always pretty, you have to let go. You have to find the best. And sometimes it's not finding the best person for it, but the person who you can guide and kind of teach what you're looking for in that particular role, whatever it might be. So it's not easy. I think it's more difficult nowadays to find help than 20 years ago, no doubt. But it's more, I think it's more a head game than it is actually doing it. It's a big step. The first one, the second one, after the fifth one, somebody making that decision won't think about it anymore. The first one or two, and you're like, do I really want to do this? It's a big step. You got to bring an employee on. You got to worry about payroll. You got to worry about all this other stuff. But if you think of it on a grand scheme where, like, if I don't do this, what is the alternative? What, how I'm bottlenecking myself into this business that now I'm going to be plateauing because I can only exist in one area at one time, So, I think it's definitely a mind game. It's definitely something that you have to stop and say, like, okay, I know what I'm doing now, and if I don't take this next step, I'm going to be stuck here. And it could be actually, a lot of times it's detrimental to the business because, you might have a poor customer reaction because you're trying to do so much that you end up hurting your business over time. So anybody that's thinking I got a big decision to make, I don't want to take anything away from the decision, but it's definitely a mind game, and people tend to psych themselves out more than it actually is. I mean, if at one point, for me, I didn't mind it. The biggest thing was having somebody work out of the house. I mean, that was kind of awkward or something, But thank God I had some great guys that were coming in, and it was like, okay, it's fine. But I'm glad I did. In the end, I had to do that. Kind of like what I was talking about, the office space. I didn't mind working out of my home because I had fixed expenses. But once I got into needing some more office or warehouse space, I didn't even get a warehouse. Not me. I'm like, okay, I'll just get like the cheapest office space I could get. And it happened to be the second floor of this one building with I don't know what we had, maybe 6 offices, 7 offices. And I turned 2 of them into offices, and the other 5 were warehouse shelving units and all kinds of stuff everywhere. Just had to be, and it didn't bother me at all. I didn't want to get signed into a lease that was too long. The way we were growing, I needed to be nimble. It might be there a year, it might be there 2 years, but then I'll get the warehouse space that I truly need for size, where it's located near a UPS hub. Some of that stuff had to play into it, but I definitely, thank God, if a decision had to be made, I would I had some ability to look out and say, I have to do this. I have to spend the money or give up the control and let somebody else take it on. It was important to me. In retrospect, I'm glad I did. I'm not saying, we made the right decisions. I just know I wouldn't change anything now. Everything worked out very well for what we did.
It's easy once it.
Yeah, no, it's just nice. I'm hoping there would be nothing better for me than if you do have someone like yourself or someone other than, the tent guy, anybody who looks at it and is like, if I can get one or two kids and that were in my, what was I at the time? 30? I guess I was later too. I wasn't young anymore. But at 30, if I can get someone that says, oh, you know what, maybe I do need to hire somebody and just get over it. I got to pull the trigger. That would be like the best thing in a way. That I would consider it. That the time, the effort, it would be well worth it because it's important and it's not easy. You're right about that. It's actually
there's this guy. It's funny because the way I think about it, I try never to make business decisions emotionally. I try to think using what I have at hand, like what are the facts. And I think the struggle for me is like the whole conversation about hiring someone. All of a sudden, I've always run my business without emotion. And now all of a sudden, there's a factor at play that requires me to use emotion. And that's the fact that if I bring somebody on, I'm putting food on somebody's table. And for me, it's like, now I'm not just taking, like, this is no longer Colden risking his money, his future, his opportunity. This is now me bringing someone on board to that. And if this ship goes down, they have to, they're going to have to swim to shore too. And there's this guy, Brad Lee, that I watch. He has a podcast as well. And he was talking about like kind of how he approached the hiring process. And it was funny because that's where the business side of myself wants to be mentally, is without the emotion. And he scaled one of his sales companies he said he scaled it to $4,000. And the second he scaled it to $4,000, he took $2,000 of that and he hired somebody. And then he managed to scale it to $6,000. And then he took the extra $2,000 and he hired somebody. No matter what, he was taking the same home because he just continued to scale it until it was like, well, I better start taking some money home because now there's just more than I know what to do with. And that's where I'm definitely risk averse. I mean, I gravitate towards, I'd risk it all. But once I have other people in the mix, it's similar with, if I had a family at home, if I had someone that I had to think about or I had to worry about, where it's like my mistakes are going to affect them, I think about the whole like bringing people on in the same way, I guess.
Well, the only thing I could think about, and I would suggest, is when you're in any business, the top priority has to be the customer. So only if your customer is being affected by you not having backup or help or enough staff in the office or whatever it is. So as soon as it gets to that point, it should trump everything. It has to, because, you've got, a restaurant or whatever it might be that's relying on Blade's marketing, for what you do for them. So at some point, that has to be it. I don't think, I know it's easy to say, but at some point, like, you're not going to be able to avoid the emotional end of it. It's like, it's either delaying it, but as soon as you bring somebody on, you're taking on, like you said, there's somebody else that's putting food on the table, let's say, but it's actually a good thing. It's not like it's a bad thing. I mean, you might be thinking of what could go wrong, but the emphasis should be on, I'm taking care of my customer. The customer will get a better service from me. And I got an employee that looks like I might be able to provide a great job to. Yes, everything can blow up, let's say, but if we think that way, we'll never get anything positive done. So keeping the customer first and the ability to stay focused on why you're bringing in somebody and what good it can do for them and the customer. I think if you dwell on that, the rest will come later, let's say, the benefits of it. That's not to say that, there's layoffs all over the place and, things happen with the economy. But you know what? If you brought on an employee and in 2 years they happen to have to be laid off, that's not, you can't know for sure that if that person went to another gig, they wouldn't have been laid off twice already in 2 years or whatever it is. So that definitely stay focused on the customer and stay focused on what you can bring to the table with as a group, let's say. I would think only and only someone in your position will know when I just can't handle it anymore. I need someone else to help me because I'm giving XYZ customer not 100%. They're getting 98%. And in the early years of a business, every customer, I think, should get 110%. Because a lot of times, even in the early times with Knicker, when they were buying from me and I had an office in my house in Saratoga, they might have been in like Denver. But boy, that's a big risk. Somebody put their credit card in a computer in the early days. They liked that outfit so much, they said probably to themselves, and I'm sure it happened many times, they said, I don't care if somebody steals my credit card. I love that outfit. I need it. I got to have it. So, there's people that took a risk on me too that I'll never meet, that really I owe tons of gratitude for. And it's almost the same way in reverse when you're bringing someone on. You got to just sit there and say, hey, this is going to benefit everybody, and let's do it, the mind plays games with you more than you think. You're going to be like, after 2 months of having someone do a great job for a customer, and you'll probably sit down with one of the restaurants, you're like, oh, we had a great, campaign we did or whatever. It turned out great, and you're going to drive back to the office. You're going to be like, boy, two months ago, I'm glad I brought, XYZ on. Otherwise, I couldn't have done that for him. So, you'll see that, and it's hard to see the benefits until they happen. It's always easy to play mind games and be like, okay, well, things can go wrong and all that. But if you stay focused on why you're doing it, I think it's doable and it's got to be done. Somebody will do it. I love telling young kids, like, if it's not you making that decision and taking care of a restaurant or a car dealer or whatever you do for business and marketing, if you're not there to do it for them and you drop the ball, someone else will fill that void. That's what's great about the country. So you always want to be the one that'll take that next gamble before the next guy, because that's how competition works, and that's what makes some people operate at certain levels and other people just can't get. Some people just aren't meant to have a business because they won't make those decisions, and the ones that do are the ones that we see all the time. They're on TV. They got bigger companies. They probably focused on what mattered early on, even though they had the back of their mind saying, well, this can happen, that can happen. I don't want to lay off somebody who's got, 1 or 2 kids. But things happen.
You're absolutely right. How do you go about, or how have you gone about balancing? I guess I would preface this with, would you consider yourself a high risk mentality type of person?
I would. I love risk, a certain risk. I won't, climb a rock face, and, I won't skydive. There's certain things I know God put me here for a reason, let's say. Faith is big to me. So, I'm not, when I'm 85, I'm not going to sit there and say, boy, I wish I jumped out of a plane in Idaho, whatever it might be. Or I wish I, climbed that ice face up in New York or whatever. But other risk, like starting a business or quitting, kind of shutting one down, even though I was making good money, to try this concept of selling suits on the web. To me, that's not risk. That's just fun. it was a lot of fun. A lot of people would be super scared. The regular weekly paycheck to me means nothing. I've never ever even, maybe that's why after high school I was dead broke. I mean, it could very well be that, but it didn't bother me at all to be like, I don't care if I'm making this, I'll just do this and wake up. You know, I'm a big believer in you wake up and you make life happen and you just give it your all and go to bed tired. You have to. Life goes by too quick.
So how do you go about balancing being a high risk individual with having the family side of it at play for most of that time? Because I know that.
It's funny you bring that up because it's no doubt, you know, my wife, Tanya, you know, if she wasn't 100% on board, I talk about everything we talk about today could not have happened if I wanted a family also and didn't have Tanya. Never gave me an ounce of any problems. I mean, not even like, don't do this, don't do that. I don't remember ever having a conversation where she said anything like, not anything at all. So what I'm getting at is I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't have that. Or I'd no doubt I'd probably have a bad personal life. You know, I could have everything I have, but I'd probably be, you know, 3 wives deep and, you know, and it happens. It happens to everybody like that. But that was important to me. And, you know, I do believe God put Tanya and I together because I definitely prayed like this is what I'm going to do. I get up every morning and I always had, you know, what am I going to do for my family? I never even thought about. Like, there's not one instance where I ever said, I hope I can sell a suit because I want to go to, you know, Aruba for the weekend. But that'll never occur for me. So certain things I did, I mean, I just stayed focused. I always knew I wanted to be comfortable and I want to take care of the customer. And, you know, to this day, Knickers got like a 120-day return policy if something happens. But, you know, we'll get somebody once in a while with a hole in a sock that they've owned it for a year. And people in the office know, just send them a new sock. You know, I don't think you can have a successful business and upset, you know, too many customers, if not, you know, one. You just don't want to do that. It's not worth it. That's for sure. I think I went off on your question a little bit, but
no, that makes perfect sense to me.
Like what were you saying about the risk? So it's definitely, no doubt, like I love to fly, but I won't skydive. You know, I love to, you know, I will travel, but if I travel, I'll go see family and friends. I'm just not one that, for me, risk is skydiving, shutting or opening a business or buying a building and trying to find tenants. That's not like risk. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. I don't know why I don't think that way, but probably my father's important. You know, he always would say, just do it. You know, I don't know, he would do it. I mean, I'd see him do it, so why couldn't I do it? And a lot of times he'd be like, there's somebody doing, you know, brake work on the car. And he's 100% right. If that kid can do it, then most kids can do it. They just don't want to do it or they don't want to learn. But so in business, it's the same thing. Like, you know, I could, with the web growing, someone was going to sell suits on the web. Why couldn't I just be the one doing it? Someone was going to sell Knickers and dominate, you know, golf clothing for on the web. Why wouldn't I do it? I just never even thought about that. So some people would look at it like it's risky. I don't know if I ever take risk into account. I don't know how to describe that. I definitely don't. I don't know why. It's probably bad. I'm not saying it's good or anything. I don't even know. Like, I would think about, like, okay, you're going to, like, some people, like, they wouldn't buy something, whatever it might be. Like, I do like real estate a little bit. I don't know if you know, but I do like to just dabble in it. So I come back to that because if I'm buying a building and maybe put a couple tenants into it, I think there's zero risk in that. They're not making any more land. They're not making any more, buildings per se. I mean, there's really not much risk. I don't know what it is. It's like buying a home. If you buy a home the right way and you hold on to it long enough, you got to get your money back, unless you just completely botched it and bought it like downtown Detroit or something. But even then, not to buy it, because you're driving to it and you're like, I'm not, why would I buy this? So it doesn't matter, certain things is risk, other things it's like opportunity, I think. But that's the difference. I think, over the years I did see, I would have like a couple opportunities where I'm like, maybe we should upgrade or get a house earlier and something like that. But I just was never like, it wasn't a not risk thing I was not taking. I was just like, it's just not me. I never even thought about it. I don't know why.
I would almost think maybe do you feel like maybe it is rooted in your faith, in that you feel in essence that, your life is guided by a higher power. And, for you, you may look at a risk, or for you, if you don't even see the risk in it, you simply see an opportunity. And the reality is, whether it's going to succeed or not, whether it's going to be a detriment to you or not, is not up to you. And you can just do your best and give it your all.
Well, there's always, everything I do, I wake up and it's always, thank God for everything yesterday and for what I'm going to go through today. So there's no doubt that there's a lot of faith in what I do, but I don't even think of it like I guess for anything, if you're going into something with the best of intentions, then there almost can be no downside. Worst comes to worst, you learn something anyways. Like early on, I lost more than a few bucks playing around in the market. I don't, at the time I thought like, I'm a moron, I'm an idiot. I know. But I had a couple good buddies who are like, just move on, it is what it is. Like, and I'm like, you know what? I think actually in the end, it was an expensive lesson, but it was a lesson and I'm better for it. I'm probably much better for it. So, we look at it as what you might look at as a risk could be a hidden jewel or gem or blessing and all that stuff where you're like, oh, geez, I didn't even know. I'm taking a job. I'm driving out to Denver and I'm going to start this guy who's building, a marketing business, whatever. So you're going out there. The intention is I got to go help out this kid. He's asking for my help. I'm going to go out there. So, along that way, there's got to be hidden blessings that we don't know about that happen. And you're going out, you're not going out there to rob a bank. You're not going out there for any, to do something, do some harm. So what can be bad? There's nothing that can be bad out of it. It's just amazing. But, you have to look at it that way too. If you don't, like I said, the mind will play terrible games and you're like, what, I don't want to drive that far. What if I get in an accident? All this stuff can come in your mind, which is fine, but you're not going to experience the good side of those blessings if you don't take that. You're going out to help somebody. There's nothing that can go wrong from it. I don't think so. I don't. Not at all.
So it's more about like the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing.
Well, you always have to stay grounded and you always have to be doing it for a good reason. I don't even think you start a business for the money. You start a business because you want to put food on the table, or you got 3 kids and you want to put them through private school, stuff, you want to do certain things. But if you do something for the money, I always felt like the money will end up chasing you and it becomes who you are in a way. You can't, when you're dealing with customers, money should be the last thing. If you do 100% for a certain customer and they love it, then the money comes afterwards, because they're going to sit there and they're going to offer you money like ahead of time. Be like, I didn't get a chance to invoice you, and the guy's screaming at you like, here, I want to pay you because you did such a great job. So, if you keep the intentions to be 100% and always on the good side, I think the risk, if people call it risk, isn't really risk anymore. It's more like, just either doing something you love or traveling somewhere you love or helping somebody that you love. It's just, it has to play into it. And that's big. And the reason why I say that is because I really do believe we're here for a reason. I don't think I'm sitting in this chair because it was empty and I happened to fall into it. I'm hoping somebody gets your age, gets into, watches this and says, my business is great. Maybe he's a car detailer, or he sells used cars on the side, and he's like, can only do one a day or two a day, but he's reached that maximum point where he's debating, should I bring somebody else on? And he's been debating it for 6 months or a year because his mind is telling him, what should I do here? I'm hoping somebody says, you know what? I got to do this. I have to take the shot, because it will be easier than it seems. It's always harder than it looks, no matter what it might be. If you just stick with it and you got the right intentions, it's not like, now listen, if you're a used car, if you run a used car lot and you want to bring somebody else on because you're trying to sell lemons and you want to sell more lemons to the crowd, you can certainly maybe get away with it. You might make a ton of money, but I don't think so. And I don't know that. I think that would be what's considered a risk. If you're hiring 2 more people to sell bad cars to more people, I think that's risky, as compared to maybe quitting your job and following a dream or starting a business and all that stuff for the right reasons.
There's so many young entrepreneurs out there too, or just young kids that are like trying to find whatever it is that they're calling is. Maybe they don't feel like the generic route is for them, that I'm sure watch a lot of, that's really, honestly, that's, I believe, the positive side of the internet and social media, because there's a plethora of negatives. It really is a horrible space for youth to be spending time, but at the same time, like, you'll find what you actively look for. Like, if you are seeking knowledge from people who know more than you, who are doing good things, you'll find it. If you're looking for, trash on TikTok, you're going to find trash on TikTok. But I know it, like, for me, exactly this style of content that I'm now able to bring people on and have them talk about is the content that got me to where I am, and also is the content that I was so hungry for and had such a hard time finding in the early years. And like, there's a lot of young kids out there that don't have like the adults or the parents or people in their life to look to at all. Or it's like, hey, my dad's a perfect example of that. He was very, like, mitigate as much risk as humanly possible, save your way to a certain point, stability, provide, did everything that a father should. But at the same time, when I would go to him and be like, hey, I have this idea, I think I want to expand this, it's going to take X amount of work and I need to invest this much. And he'd be like, it was always like, oh, I don't know if that's the best idea. Like, are you sure you should be doing that? And that's where, for me, a lot of probably the last year has been like reprogramming my brain to not have that echoing doubt going on. And it wasn't just him. It was a lot of people that cared a lot about me too. It was a lot of friends. It was a lot of, just people that you're around. But then you start getting around people who are just like, why are you even asking me? Like, just go do it.
I know. I mean, so it's hard, and that's not bad. There's nothing bad about that either. There's a place for everybody, let's say, and there's I know your pops, I know what he did. He helped a lot of people. So it doesn't matter, all that stuff about, what, like I said, risk, it depends on how you look at it. It's just, there's no doubt that if you want a business and you want to take it to the next level and succeed at it, you have to look at the important things, which are, to me, it's a customer, what he wants, delivering on it. And if you stay focused on that, you have to hire the first employee. You're going to have to. If you're good at it, if you're not, it's a different ballgame. But if you're good at it, you're going to be like, I'm not doing what I should do for this group. I have to bring somebody else on so I can get back to 100%. And then you've got more great customers, and then you need a second person. All that stuff comes into play, but it's not easy to stay focused. I'm not saying it's, I'm sure for you, it's like, you hear that in the back of your mind, and that's good. And I had some family members certainly wouldn't do the crazy stuff that they think I did. I got buddies that you definitely like, they're much happier just having a 9 to 5 and knowing that Friday they're going to get X amount and the next week they get X amount. That would just drive me bonkers.
It
would drive me like, you have no idea how I think that's bad. And we can get into school, even like you say, like structured, and like, it's probably mentality too. Like I was horrible in school. I just wasn't me. I never liked it. I don't like, being boxed in and being, I got to go to school for what? Like, what do you mean? Like, you just don't, certain things I don't think help a kid. Nowadays, there's no doubt that most kids, instead of having a phone on them, they should have, a welder or the old erector sets, and, they should be building and knowing what they're good at. When I was young, we liked to just crash stuff and build it and whatever. You just did like, whatever. And, the young kids now, like you say, with cell phones, well, I don't know what skills they're developing. I have no idea. Maybe, 2% of them will be good programmers, and they'll be good at, building the next cell phone, I guess. But other than that, I think the youth of today definitely is looking for leadership, and it's not, times are a lot different than they used to be, as far as, like you said, having parents that watch the kid and all that stuff. It's just not like it used to be in a way. So that's sad on it. But
I think really, like, the structured education system is built for a certain breed. It's a cookie cutter. I mean, it's like a system. Like, what was your experience coming up and going through whatever extent of the school system that it is that you went through?
Well, in high school, eventually, like my senior year and junior, I just hated school. I mean, if I could skip, I skipped. Yeah. Thank God I had great teachers. They didn't set me back. I just barely, maybe whatever I got, 75s or C pluses, whatever they were. I was happy. I was just, very happy. But I hated school. And I took a couple years off after high school. I didn't think I wanted to go to school. I know I didn't. So I took a couple years off and just tried to find out what I did want to do. But then I did go and get my associates at a school where I met Tanya, and even that was, not the best. I grew up, like I said, my parents' tailor shop, so I knew how to sew, and I had gone to a school that had a design program where at the end of the semester you had to design an outfit and make the pattern and make the outfit, and by the end of the semester you had to present it. Well, I went home the first weekend and I made the pattern and I made the outfit, and I came back on Monday and I had the outfit made. And I remember talking to my professor, she's a great lady, and I'm like, I don't think this is for me. What am I going to do here now for like another 7 weeks, whatever it was? And I said, I told her I'm done. And thank God they kind of came to me with like a way to get a degree that was more independent studies, and I didn't have to go every day. And it was great, actually, because at least I got some degree. I don't know what good it did me, but it's okay.
There's and now there seems to be a degree for everything. I mean, the fact that we have gender and women's studies, and we have all of these.
We got to get into. If we do this, we're going to have to break out the beers. Because you're not kidding me. That's not going to last, though, buddy. I think people are waking up. I think most people, hopefully, are probably going to wake up and be like, you know what? This is crazy. This is crazy what they're doing to the kids. But
when they're 40 or 50 and they're still paying $700 a month on student loan payments and making $25,000, $30,000 a year living out of a van. I mean, it's a sickening system. Like, it really, when you actually sit down and you actually educate yourself and you actually, like, start at the beginning, though. It's like, for me, I always, like I went to the dollar. What is the dollar? Not like in a physical sense. What is the piece of paper like farther back? Like what is the dollar? What is the meaning of money? Where does it come from? And then following that all the way on up, and then you start understanding these broader agendas, these broader systems. And we look at, once kids get to a certain level of high school, they start, schools start bringing in, used to have massive, like, I don't even know what they would have called them, but college presentations, and they'd bring in all these representatives from all the nearby colleges. Basically, and when you actually look at it from a bird's eye view, you come to the realization that they flooded the entire school of kids, young kids with malleable brains into a room and put 30, 40 college representatives on a stage to indoctrinate them for 3 hours on end into believing that they were not going to be successful if they didn't go to college. And the whole school system, all of the staff, all of the friends, and then the family members eventually buy into it. And for my parents and their generation, that might have actually been a reality. It was like, if you went to college, you were going to make twice as much, or you were going to make more money. You were going to be more successful, be able to provide. But it's really not necessarily the case anymore. I mean, the cost of tuition has continued to outperform and outrise from where the levels of what people are making are. It's a very broken system. And then you have student loans backed by the federal government that you can't default on. I mean, when you really think about what that means, it's a pretty sickening thing.
Well, there's no doubt that there were bad intentions on what they're doing, because if you really loved a kid, you would stop and say, like, what are you good at? What do you want to do in life that'll feed a family and that'll let you use the talents that they're at? And that's why a lot of things I think about, I go back 50, 100 years, because things were great for hundreds of years in a way. Compared to now, they just were. If you brought up what's money. For most of civilization, money meant feeding the family. You went out, and whatever you did, whether you swapped it, if you bartered, or whatever you got it because you had kids home, and you thought, if I brought home 2 chickens, I could swap one and get some corn, and they'll have corn. That's just what happened. Only lately did society change the value of everything, let's say, including money, where money has to be, a travel plan, or it's got to be, a way to break up a family and go and run off with someone else. I mean, there's so many things that are relatively new developments in all this stuff, including when kids were young 50, 100 years ago. They kind of just automatically steered into what they did. They would hang out at probably a farm and take, help rebuild the plow. And then the kid would just learn like how to build something. He ended up being the mechanic around town or something. It was just the way it was. Or we had a girl that would love to just babysit, when the rest of the family was out in the fields plowing. That girl ended up the local teacher. That's the way things were. Not anymore. Now there's a lot of pressure on these kids. I think the pressure is really to control their mind. There's no doubt they want to get them in early, keep them when they're older so that they can say all this stuff that they're doing is normal and it's all accepted, And if you get enough people on your side, I guess you can pretend like some of the stuff they're doing now is normal. It isn't. You're not going to erase, 2,000 years of what's right and wrong. But, for some people, if they want to do what's wrong and they can find 10 people around them to think of it as it's correct, then their life is much better. So that's probably what the game plan was. Let's try to get these kids early, make them think, they need me and they need to spend, if you get a kid to spend $250 on a degree, you control them. You're gonna be able to control where they work and the fact that they probably won't leave their first job, and they're just gonna be like, once you got a mortgage payment for 25 years for as your school, as your tuition bill, you know, you got a lot of kids that you can tell what to do every day. I think that's no doubt where we've come in society.
You're absolutely right.
It's a shame. It's child abuse, really, but and thank God, like you said, growing up, maybe, and for me, school was never. I probably usually could skip if I just went to work with my pops. He could care less, which was great at the time. You know, I loved it. I was skipping, and you know, but I learned. You know, I just learned a ton of stuff by just getting in there. One thing I went to school, but I went for like. It was cheap back then. I definitely would not have gotten any loans or done really getting debt for any degree. Forget that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I even went. I mean, as much as I hated school, I did exceedingly well in school. School came very easy to me, but it bored the shit out of me. So did very well.
You've got your own, your own business. So that, there's certain parameters I see, like with people, like if you got a bit, you don't do society's norms and end up abnormal in a way, like having a successful business and all this stuff. They don't want you to have all that stuff. They want, 100 companies controlling every aspect of our lives, let's say. So I know that you probably, even before I really knew you, I knew that, to get where you are, you've had to have not liked a few things in life. It's just the way, it is. You really can't incur $200,000 in student loans, and you can, but you really can't start your own business from scratch as easy as if you just did it before college, because college didn't prep you for it, and you didn't have the baggage of a mortgage payment for tuition costs for 25 years. That changes it. It's gonna definitely make it harder to do, no doubt.
And then they got all their. See, it's exactly what you said. It's a strategic conquest. They're dividing, and then they're going to conquer. The question I think that really needs to start being posed is like, there's been more divide than ever in recent years, and like it or not, they're succeeding at what they're doing. And I don't know if we just have fatherless households pumping these kids out, or like I don't understand how our youth could be so naive to a lot of these things. I think people are starting to wake up to an extent, but for every one kid that comes around and his eyes are wide open to the situation and the gravity of it, there's 10 other kids screaming and meowing and thinking they're cats in the classroom that are all going to be, basically he's just got to carry the weight of the world and continue to push forward. And I think that, that obviously plays a role too, because it makes them tougher. It makes those individuals tougher. I mean, I'd take him over that whole class if shit hit the fan. But at the same time, it feels like we're outnumbered.
Well, it is more important, I think, than all that is. It's so unfair to those other kids that are being told that, wearing a tail, like you say, in high school. It's so unfair. Someday that person's going to grow up and hopefully, rightfully so, be very upset that the adults in the room, while they were 12 or 13 years old and thinking all these crazy things, the adults in the room didn't say, snap out of it. What are you, crazy? It probably is abuse. If it is a good side, I do tell younger folks like yourself that's why I think life is like a little bit easier now, because if you do have ambition, the odds are, when I was out of high school or just out of college, I probably was, I don't know, 10% of the kids in my class that were thinking like me. Now it's, you might be the only kid in your class that has ambition to go out and start something. So getting to the next level, being the next PayPal, whatever, is probably a little bit easier because you got less competition. You just got more kids on, like you say, playing whatever those games are on their cell phones. If you're the one kid that doesn't get into that and you're thinking about how to build a spreadsheet and maybe you can start a online payment platform for, getting paid in Bitcoin on an app, and you do it, that's a game changer, compared to what the other kids. You don't have to worry about those kids with the cell phone and trying to put puzzles together. You don't have to worry about them trying to steal your idea, because even if you gave it to them, they just don't have the ambition to do it, which is sad. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's awful.
I absolutely agree with you. I think the only detriment is like kids growing up in certain areas, certain places where, a kid doesn't necessarily have control where he's born.
Oh, no doubt, dude. No doubt. Listen, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I doubt I came up with it, but either I heard it or maybe I did come up with it. But wherever there's a kid that can't function, I do believe there's an adult that created that dysfunction. There's no doubt. Kids are perfect until there's an adult somewhere that screws them up and just ruins them. It's just the way life is. And it's very sad that that's the case now, probably much more than ever. But, so I always try to keep the less fortunate on my mind, because I'm lucky. I had parents that woke up every day and their goal was to feed me and my sisters. You're in the same boat. Your father woke up. It doesn't matter where he had to travel through the Adirondack Park. He wanted to, take care of you guys. So, but that, we're lucky. We're lucky nowadays. It's probably just as normal to have, the typical family member just meet someone else and move to a different state. It's just sad, but the reality of it. So, like I said, that's sad. If there is a benefit to it, it's the ones that stay focused will have less competition to try to achieve what they're thinking. But it's sad it has to come at the backs of a kid that's probably been wronged by an adult somewhere.
I think it's the kids that are born in good homes, that are raised right, that have the chance that a lot of these kids don't have, is have a level of ambition that other kids don't have. I mean, we're talking about this percentage getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I see it as a unique individual's duty to go out, build things for the betterment of society, so that they can actually, because like it or not, I don't think money is the end all be all, but money talks, and money can give you access to certain resources and give you the ability to help certain people. And so I think obviously first, make sure your family is squared away, make sure your family is taken care of, food is on the table. But then, anything beyond those measures, I see as nothing more than opportunity to go out and reach those kids when they're young. Like, whether it's bringing them under your wing when they don't have a home life, or maybe it's starting a foundation that works with the parent side of things to help keep parents together, to help to build, better social norms for societies or communities. Because then the next step, I would believe, is affect your community, and then the communities all can rise together. So I don't know what your feelings are on that.
The first thing that comes to mind is that society's given up on God. So once you don't have a main goal in life, which is to get up, say thank you, and take care of what hopefully he put you there to accomplish in life, everything can go wrong. Now you've got no compass. You've got kids with absolutely not only no family, they just, I couldn't imagine. They just get up, and today is, I don't even know what it is. If I didn't have my family and God, I don't even know what I would do. I don't even know why I'd get up. It would be crazy. So society, I guess most of society thought it was just okay to move on, or, I'm a big fan of, if it worked for hundreds of years, there's a reason why it worked. I'm not about to change it. I'm not that smart. I'm actually just not smart. So why would I take something that's worked for people for 2,000 years and decide it's not going to work anymore. I think it's foolish, but that's, society might have to go through this and eventually pay the price for turning their backs on, God and family and everything and being like, okay, we can do this. A lot of people like, it takes a community to change a life. It doesn't. Just go out and do it. Like, be nice yourself, like people say. If you stop in Walmart and somebody sneezes, you kind of want to be like, God bless you. I mean, wouldn't you want to be blessed if, could they say your heart stops when you sneeze quickly? So, that's where it kind of like all started from. Why would somebody not want to say that and be nice to somebody? But it doesn't happen. It's crazy. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it rarely happens. But
so there's a couple of these kind of influential business guys that I've always watched coming up. And a couple of them have a very passionate point that they make over and over. And that is that once you start making money, like making real income in business, you can't get it out of your hands fast enough. Like you can't reinvest it back into the business fast enough. One, I think it's obviously they're talking probably from a tax standpoint, for one. And for two, it's like, well, why wouldn't you continue to water the plant that's growing? So what is some of your mentality behind reinvesting in the business? And like, have you always just been like, did you set up at a certain point when you started scaling any of the businesses? Did you kind of say, okay, this is how much I need and my family needs to put food on the table to get by, and then everything else just goes back into the business? Or was there, like, how do you think about like saving on that side for like the future?
I don't know how to answer that, but I'm like kind of like I've always been, and I'll go back to what I said, like if I can invest anything and make the customer experience better, I always did. And that includes bringing more sock patterns on and more plaid knicker patterns and solid color knickers and all the caps like that. If I knew that if I could, and unlike what you said with tax reasons, when you're buying inventory at the retail level, you actually don't get the tax benefits. You get people, it's a rare, sad fact in our tax code, but you only get to deduct retail goods, the cost of the retail goods, after you've sold them. So you can't, spend, let's say, $1 million on a warehouse full of inventory and immediately deduct it. You take the deduction as you burn through the goods. So it took me a few years to be like, are you serious? Like that? I mean, why would they structure the code that way? And maybe there's a good reason. I doubt there is for it. But so in my case, and a lot of retail cases, if you're investing in a new line or, more colors or patterns, it actually is an investment because you better sell them. If you don't sell them, you got to get rid of them to be able to deduct the loss anyway. So it's like, it's a true investment in it. But I always looked at it like, what's better for the customer? And the rest came easy. I don't know if it was a combination of being blessed and customers liked it. We did have, we still have some stuff that are slow movers, let's say. But, as far as on the whole, I never thought about a percentage of what came in. I'd plow back in. I always said, big picture, should we do this? And what does it take to do it? If we could do it, we did it, Even on the home front, I don't know, I like to think we live pretty simply. So I just like we live, and then the rest is like, I don't know, I feel like doing something or buying more inventory or investing in real estate. I would just like, okay, can I do it? If I could, fine. If I can't. So I'm probably not, it's probably not the most politically correct answer. Like there's no percentage on it, but I always invested where I could, number one. I have to feel super comfortable on me liking what I was doing, like whether it's bringing in more colors or something like that, because I don't know, I always felt like I have to like, number one, what I do, and then the rest would hopefully pan out. Thank God, on the knicker front, it's been good. Customers love it, and they love us and all that. So, but not an easy decision, I know, but only a business owner will know what they're lacking and what their customers, what they can't provide suddenly for customers, and then that will determine for them how much and where to allocate some money for new resources, like we talk about the first employee or something. Is it going to be a receptionist? Is it going to be, a salesperson? All that, that's something that the business owner has to stop and say, like, okay, I can spend so much a week. Where am I better? Where am I going to get the most return for my customer? Is it a new salesperson? Is it new, receptionist or whatever it might be?
So I got two final questions for you. The first is, I feel like a big struggle, well, it may not even be a struggle really, but oftentimes when you have that certain level of ambition and you're gravitating towards business, there's always the constant debate on whether you should focus all in on one thing or just kind of leave yourself open to other opportunities. I know, like, I walk in your guys' shop and sometimes there's, different things going on. You got, these mugs, you got all this stuff going on, and you're constantly working and doing new things. Like, do you believe that one is more beneficial over the other because by not necessarily focusing all in on one thing, you're kind of diversifying your skill sets? Or do you think it just all depends on the person?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I think my answer has to be that I've got to have some form of ADD. There's no doubt. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care about being diagnosed or not, but I have to have something going on at all times. There's something there. There's no doubt there's something I have to be doing or fixing or building or selling at all times. So it's funny you say that. When you come in, like, with the mugs, I'm like, I don't know, we can print the mugs up. Why not just print them? Maybe I'll even get a customer that says, like, I want to put my face on it. If I can make that one guy a mug with his face on it, to me, like, at this point, it's awesome. I would just love, anything like that really pans out. I always have been a big believer in the multiple dart. If you're starting a business and you're doing 100% and you might have a couple more minutes to maybe chase another dream, I would definitely chase the other dream too. If I didn't work that way and I was stuck in the tailor shop and I was happy making a good living and I didn't want to try the internet and try selling suits, and then maybe if I didn't want to put the effort into building the knicker site and do that, there's a lot of things for me that I'm glad I function that way. And my ADD probably played a big part of it, or the fact that, I always woke up and said, I'm going to bed tired tonight, and what am I going to get tired from? It wasn't going to be, like I said, climbing a rock wall. It was going to be plugging away at something and just do it. But definitely, that's one thing I like to tell younger kids is don't stay too focused, and definitely, if you give it your all, that's all you can hope for. And if you have, and a lot of people, 24 hours is a lot of time in a day. Unfortunately, society's told us, like, you need to wind up and you get up and then, you have coffee for 2 hours and then you go to work and you take it easy, and at 4:30 you're home, and then, society wasn't like that for ever. Like, you got up at 4 and you went to bed at, when it got dark, and then you were so tired from walking and working that you just did it again. You had to. It's what you had to do. So, all this time that a young person would have where they don't think they have time, if they play that mind game, they won't get anything done. You have to be in all places all the time. And I don't mean it literally. I just mean Like you get up and you use your day like packed. You have to. Like you have to do it that way. If you want a successful business, there really is no downtime because it should trump the acquiring of customers and taking care of customers should trump nap time, or I'm going to go grab, beers for 2 hours and stuff like that. You can do it, but it has a toll on it. There's no doubt if you're taking 2 hours a day that you could be working or growing a business times 5 days, times 4 weeks a month, you've got a lot of time that you could be growing a business to the next level. And if that's not priority, that's one thing. But if the goal is to get to a successful point and after 10 years be able to slow down and say, wow, there's a lot of people that all that hard work I did, there's a lot of people that it's paying off for now. If that's the goal, then you have to stay focused. But and what I mean by focused is using your time wisely. And maybe it is a couple darts. Like I said, I'm a big fan of that. You don't know that everything's going to stick. You don't know that everything's going to stick. If you can use a couple hours to branch off and try something that might stick, I would recommend it, no doubt. Like I said, if I didn't, if I could still be in that mall, had a sewing machine, because the money was good, but it wasn't going to be me. That's for sure.
I'm definitely the same way. It's so silly to me to all these people saying like you have to hyper focus on one thing and do just that one thing. Get your 10,000 hours under your belt, master the craft, and it's like, well, I'll master the damn thing, but like, okay, so you expect me? So what? I'm supposed to not learn anything about accounting so I can keep my own books? Like I'm wearing 10 different hats at the moment, but I'm wearing 10 different hats out of necessity. It's not like I'm choosing to lack focus in my life. I'm doing what needs to be done. And so, and like you said, you never know. I never would have known there was any level of opportunity or drive or passion for me in podcasting or building. I never thought I'd have a podcast studio. Never thought the podcast studio would turn into a studio rental where clients now come in and book it out. I never thought any of those things would happen. I never thought that editing of those podcasts would happen, but it all came in suit because I was like, I've been watching podcasts, and I feel like that's where a lot of my education has come from in a business sense growing up. And I want to provide that for other people. So I'm going to start my own. I got 2 mics and a table, and Nico and I set it up, and we did it.
That's great. Isn't that good?
Now here it is here, and who knows what the next thing will be, or who knows what. But I hate that society constantly wants you to they're always trying to get you to close doors. And I get closing certain doors. It's like for going out with friends and drinking Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, watching football, doing all these things. It's like, well, it depends what you want out of life. If you want to watch your football in the evenings every Sunday and you're passionate about it, then do it. But know that I might be closing that door and getting ahead of you then. But I might have my own vices to do other things.
You have to look at it that way. That's exactly it. And I think, some people will say, I know when Elon Musk bought Twitter, there's all this hyperbole on the web, people thinking like he can't handle it. You don't get to be Elon Musk. That guy's got 50 fires going at once. And that's what drives him. I can completely see that. I just can. It doesn't bother me to be always behind in a way. I'm sure he wraps up an interview and there's 6 more interviews that he had to, that he's got to prep for or even show up for. You got to admire a guy like that. I do. I mean, I think it's phenomenal. He's going to die and he's going to, on his deathbed, there's not going to be any bucket list left. He's going to have checked all of them for not just himself, but for half the population. Right. That's important. I think that's all comes down to that. Again, if you have good intentions and you're going into something, then it's not really risk. It's not really work. It's a big difference when you like what you do or you're doing it for the right reasons. It becomes a lot easier to do, I think.
So my final question would be, and it's interesting. So young males tend to be the audience that gravitate towards this content and this podcast. What would be a word of advice that you would have for young men growing up today? And you've got 3 sons of your own growing up in this time period, so if you want to tailor it to your sons as well.
Well, they know anyways, because
I'm sure they do.
Crazy, but, and I think the most important thing for a young guy to do now is to always remember they're here for a purpose. God put them in a certain location at a certain time for a purpose. Forget about what society tells them they should be doing. Forget about what society tells them how to do it. All this stuff that they have to wake up in the morning and they have to say, how can I better somebody? If you focus on why God put you here, it's probably to do something for somebody else. And there's so much more enjoyment when you do something for somebody else than doing it for yourself. Now, until people realize that and get it, but if you go out, like I said, if you're going out and your intention is, I'm going to do the best job for my customer, the upside is that you do the great job for the customer, and the reaction to that is you're going to get accolades and you're going to get more business for whatever you did by doing, by going into it, like waking up and saying, like, I've got whatever marketing and I've got to go meet up and I have to do a social media shoot or whatever, somebody, in your case, you might do. If you're going into it to do the best you can for that person or that group of people, I just don't know how you can end up failing. You just can't. It's always like, so going back to your question, wake up and be like, I'm going to do something for somebody. It's not about me. I'm a big not me type of thing you do. Life is way too short to be like me. We have a society that's a me, myself, and I type society. You can see what's happening to it. Everybody that lives in Detroit and all those abandoned homes, if every person would go outside of their own home and just sweep and rake the leaves in their property, if everybody did that, you wouldn't have a dirty block anymore. But everybody's looking at it like that's the last thing on their list. I don't want to go sweep for that. I'm just going to, I don't even know what they're doing. It's just unbelievable. Put the phone down and wake up, thank God, and say, what am I going to do for somebody today that will make them happy? Because if they're happy, it'll have benefits if you're in business. It just has benefits in life and all that other stuff like that. Not easy, I take it maybe, it's not like everybody wants to wake up and figure out, something that, it's easier to grab the phone, I guess, and jump on TikTok. I think, I don't even know. I never did it. So I don't even know. I'm not going to ever do it. So I don't, but I couldn't imagine just doing that. There's so much to learn. If you're going to grab a phone, learn something that you can help somebody with. It's just crazy. There's always a video. I love working on cars. I love, it's a standing invitation. If your radiator goes, I'm going to look in my phone. I'm going to find somebody that recorded a video of how to swap out your radiator. And 12 minutes later, we're going to have your car on the lift, and we're going to have your radiator out in another 12 minutes after that. And it's just awesome. I don't know. That's just what, and that was done for hundreds of years. I do believe with the few exceptions, people got up and the community got together, and if somebody needed a barn, they'd all build the barn. If somebody needed to plow the field, they'd all take turns and plow the field. It's just, 500 years ago, you really probably couldn't wake up and say, I'm going to spend a day thinking about myself. You'd probably be dead. You just I don't know what would happen. You just didn't do it. Now it seems like, most of society wants to wake up and feel that way. They can. I think they're going to have regrets and voids down the road. Think about what's in it for me right now. For today, there's consequences. It might be 6 months. It might be a year down the road, but there's consequences to that. I don't ever want to be like, have too many regrets. My only regret is sometimes I just don't have enough time in a day. I want to do this, I want to do that, and before you know it, bedtime. Do it again the next day.
There you go. Mr. Parisi.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much
job.
for coming on.
Proud of you, buddy.
I appreciate it.